What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be giving you a presentation on the findings of some research that I did last year in Anglo-American. What I'm going to do is I'm going to contextualize that as well. But what I also want to do is I also want to contextualize why Steve is capturing this presentation on digital video. There he is at the back of the room. Don't look at the camera and then everybody looks. That's fine. What it's really about is that in Anglo-American, I've got colleagues in 21 countries around the world. And not everybody can be at every presentation, and not everybody can be at every knowledge sharing event. So what we do is, as a knowledge management group, we try as far as possible to capture whatever we do so that we can actually disseminate it to our colleagues. So what it is that I did this research in Anglo-American, and what I want to do is I want to share it with my colleagues. So I've asked Steve to be here to actually capture this presentation so that we can actually do that. Right, so now back to the presentation. Critical success factors for communities of practice. Since 1998, I've been involved in establishing and nurturing communities of practice. First, when I was in SAPI, the pulp and paper company, then within Anglo Platinum, I assisted with a number of the SAB Miller communities, global communities that were established in Hewlett's Aluminium, etc., etc. Kumba Resources, I was very involved as the head of knowledge management. So what it is, I've been involved in communities of practice and establishing communities of practice in a number of organizations over the years. And what I did find was that each experience was different. Each organization was different, that it was very culturally dependent. But another thing was that I was always finding that I had to immerse myself in the business first to learn about the culture and learn about what would succeed. Maybe a little bit of trial and error before actually commencing with really sort of a big bang approach to establishing communities of practice. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to eat a little bit of my own dog food, and I wanted to make sure that I was also improving my processes along the way. So what I thought I would do is at Anglo-American, since it's a large company, as I mentioned, 21 countries around the world, 200,000 employees, I couldn't afford to do trial and error. So what I thought I would do is I thought I would do some research, and I would actually find out for Anglo-American what are the critical success factors that are required for communities of practice, so that I could make sure that as a team we actually focused on those particular factors. It was also quite convenient because I was doing my master's degree and I needed a thesis. So what I did is I used it as my research. But that was fine because, you know, the thing is in Anglo-American we were quite happy that at least the research I was doing for my master's I could actually apply in the organization. What I did is, if we have a look here, is that I found, looking at the other previous research that was done in the literature, I found approximately 14 potential critical success factors. Okay. Another thing that I found in the research was that it was very dependent on the organization. To an extent, I knew that myself anyway, but it was nice to actually see it in writing. It was a research report that came out from APQC, the American Productivity and Quality Group, and in their report they actually said that they found that the factors were very, very dependent on the organization in which the communities of practice had been established. What I found was that, yes, these communities certainly differed depending on the organization. They also varied on the type of community, and they also varied on where they were in their life cycle. But let me actually elaborate a little bit more on that. If we look at the top picture, as you can see, out of 14 factors, I was only looking for those factors that were critical success factors, not those that were nice to have. There's absolutely no way that we can support 14 potential success factors. We wanted the 2 or 3 that were absolutely critical that we needed to support. Okay. Then if you look further on, you'll see that with my colleagues, we characterized these communities into 4 particular types. We had those that were strategically aligned, so they were around a strategic imperative, like, for example, heavy mining equipment. We've got a lot of capital invested in heavy mining equipment, and also that is where most of our running costs are. So around heavy mining equipment, that was strategically aligned. Safety, strategically aligned. Corporate social investment, also strategically aligned. So what we found is we had a number of those, around about 10 of those communities. In fact, to be precise, currently we have 9 strategically aligned communities. Tactical process, that was another area. For example, people were sharing knowledge about smelting or crushing, milling, all the processes that we have in a mining organization that would be common around the world. So those are very much tactical processes. And their focus was always continuous improvement and maybe process innovation that they shared. They captured the best practice at one mine and shared it with the others so they could implement. Then we had project communities, which were around large projects. And then the 4th area was knowledge nurture. Now, if we take, for example, something like uranium extraction, during the 80s, South Africa was very involved in uranium extraction. It went a little bit out of favor, out of fashion. And now what is happening is with the energy crisis that we've got booming in the world, we are looking for safe uranium technology. So what we're finding is that there's more of a focus on it. Now, that would be a typical example of a community that would be focusing on knowledge nurture. What it really is it's to say, we have this knowledge, we know we need to keep it for the future, but perhaps what we need to do is we just need to be custodians for a while. We may not be applying it. So we had a few of those. Overall, we had just over 300 communities of practice in Anglo-American that were identified. And now these are communities that had sprung up by themselves. Okay, these were not communities where some manager or some executive had said, you have to share your knowledge on heavy mining equipment. What had happened was that group of people, they'd found each other, they'd got together, and they'd started sharing their knowledge, and really it was absolutely incredible to see what they'd been able to do over the 4 years that they'd been together. Okay, then what we have is in the 3rd picture is the life cycle of a community of practice. What will happen is the need is identified, the people get together for the first time, launch the community, set their goals, their roles, who's going to be the leader, who are they going to choose in the organization to be their sponsor, do they need a facilitator, etc. They work towards those goals, they get the critical mass of activity going, they develop, they get to the maturity stage where you can see it starts plateauing off, and then what happens is it kind of gets archived and declines. Because sometimes these communities have a life cycle, and they start and they finish, and they disband, and people go off and do other things, and they join other communities. You don't have to try to keep them going sort of in a virtual IC. Then what we have, let me quickly go through the list of potential success factors. Clear goals. You'll notice that all of these are in alphabetical order because when I designed the questionnaire to go out regarding these potential success factors, I didn't want people to see that there was some hierarchy. So what I did is I deliberately put them into alphabetical order. So just because clear goals comes first doesn't mean that it's the most important. But certainly in a number of the communities in the research it was found that if they didn't have clear goals, they weren't going to survive. Then we had a core group. The definition of the core group is that's the 4 or 5 people in the community that do most of the work. Okay? Instead of expecting everybody to do equal amount of work in the community, you sometimes find that there's a core group that does most of the work. Then a facilitator. In large communities, often what they do is they want somebody who's a facilitator for that community, who keeps the heartbeat ticking, makes sure that people are sharing the right documents, that they're collaborating. If somebody's asked a question, it gets answered by the experts, etc. The facilitator is not necessarily an expert, but what they do is they really have a facilitation role. Then what we have is the leader. The leader is usually a subject matter expert, and they're the person who's most passionate about it, and they're usually the person who says, let's start this community and get it going. Line management support. In some organizations, this is seen as very, very important because people want to know that they've got the support of their manager to be collaborating with their colleagues, rather than their manager saying, will you get out of the chat room and actually go back to work. So this is very much a cultural aspect, is whether one has line management support or not. Participation, are people participating? Or is this a fairly inactive community of practice? Are the people getting personal value? Promotion of the community. Some of the communities like to actually promote themselves within the organization, so that what they can do is they can promote what they're achieving, what their goals are, and what their contribution is to the organization. If I go back to the example of the heavy mining equipment community that we have, what they do is they do extensive promotion to Anglo-Americans, saying this is how much money we are saving, this is how much we are improving efficiency by choosing the right equipment, etc. Quality content, and this is about, are people sharing quality content within the community? In other words, are they sharing the gems, or are they just sharing everything, including the waste? Quality members, are the subject matter experts in the community? I can imagine nothing worse than if you've got 2 or 3 subject matter experts who refuse to be members of the community. It doesn't give it much credibility. A sponsor, does one need a sponsor in the organization? Perhaps what you're going to need is to go back to the example of the heavy mining equipment community. What they do is every 2 years they get together face to face, they have a conference. Somebody needs to fit the bill for that. So do they need a sponsor? Strategic alignment, is that important? And trust. What is the level of trust within that community and people feel safe to share? I mean, can you consider a community where people are sharing safety incidents? You know, you'd have to have a very high level of trust there, you know, to be able to share with your colleagues, you know, this is actually what happened and we injured somebody, you know, without blame being attributed, or without that person being sort of hauled up in front of everybody and used as the fall guy. And then user-friendly technology. What I did is I put together a web-based tool, and you guys, I saw that we've got a delegate list, so if you want to, you can really contact me. I'm very happy to share the questionnaire with you, because, you know, I feel that it's very important that you don't take what I've got here and say, oh, well, these were the critical success factors for Anglo, they're going to work for us. I would actually recommend that you do the survey yourselves. So I'm very happy to share the questionnaire with you. But what I did is I built it into a web-based tool. It was actually some freeware that I downloaded from the net, and my largest challenge was getting the IT people in Anglo to allow me to use it, because it wasn't expensive, which was for nothing. But I'm sure they will appreciate that. I made sure that it took less than 5 minutes to complete, so it was just a whole lot of radio buttons that people clicked on. I wasn't going to send them a spreadsheet or anything like that. I really wanted to make it quick and easy. And what I did is, before I sent the questionnaire, a week before I sent the questionnaire, I sent out an email to all the members of those 300 communities that I'd identified, asking their permission to please involve them in the survey, because I didn't want to spam them. So what I did is I got 233 mails back giving me permission to send them the survey, which I then did. Okay, so I followed it up a week later, sent them the survey, and I got 158 replies, which I felt was actually very good. Interesting thing was that most of those arrived within a week. Okay, so people were very quick to respond, and I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that I asked them for their permission first, and they said that they were willing to. And also what I had is I had 101 free text contributions, because I had a space where people could give their contribution, and I found that that was very, very good in terms of giving me more feedback than I'd actually requested. What I did is in the questionnaire I asked them, does this factor exist or not in your community? But if we have a look at this, the prevalence, the people who said yes, we have a high level of trust in our community. Look at that, 97%. Now, for me, that was absolutely amazing. You know, I mean, I always thought that Anglo-American being large corporate, you know, sometimes regarded as a little bit of a corporate imperialist, that sort of thing, for people to say that there was a high level of trust. Now, what that did is that broke my paradigm, because there I was coming with my own paradigms, thinking, oh, these people aren't going to have a high level of trust, I'm going to have to do a lot of trust building. Sure, thank goodness I didn't have to. And what I found interesting was that 70% of them said that they had line management support. That for me was very interesting, because usually what one finds is that middle management are a problem when it comes to knowledge sharing. Is that they don't necessarily want their subordinates to be sharing across boundaries, because traditionally they've been the gatekeepers. And it's always been, if you want to know something, you come to me because I'm your manager, and then I find it out for you, I put my particular spin on it, and then I feed you what I want you to know. So usually what happens is that because that power has been taken away from middle management, they usually feel the most threatened. So getting line management support is usually very difficult. But the thing is, what we saw was that line management support was there, so it was quite clear that they realized that their subordinates were more effective after having shared with their colleagues around the world in these communities of practice, and it made them look good. And that was also something really great for me, which meant that I didn't have to go on this campaign of change management with middle management, which sometimes is impossible, and one just actually has to walk away and get another job somewhere else, because, you know, otherwise one's not going to achieve anything. And then here are the results. If we look at the different types of community, and if we have a look at the different phases in their life cycle, we'll see that there were two factors that were consistent for the entire group, and that was quality content and user-friendly technology. The interesting thing is, what if they'd said that it was a low trust environment? Maybe they would have put trust there as critical. Maybe if they didn't have line management support, they would have said line management support is critical. So this actually showed me why it is so specific for the organization, why it's so culturally specific, that you cannot actually take what's worked in another organization and do plug and play. Okay, so for us, fantastic. User-friendly technology, that was great, because then we could delegate that to the IT department. Okay, but also the thing is, over 70% of them said they had user-friendly technology, so that was fantastic. We knew we were really well on the way to supporting those communities. And quality content, well, what I did is when I trained people in those 21 countries, which I did last year, I got a lot of wage miles last year. When I trained those people, we really focused on what is quality content. How do you get the experts to do peer review on content, on conversations that are being shared? We can see that the strategic communities wanted everything. And that was quite interesting, because we have 9 of them. What we do is we give them very deliberate support. What I've done is I've trained the leaders of those communities, the facilitators of those communities, and I give them proactive support. Even while I'm on sabbatical now, I still check in with those people. I've got it in my calendar every 2 weeks, just by email to say, how's it going, etc., etc. The office is 10 minutes away from me anyway, so I have no problem giving them support. 2 of the communities, what we did is we trained more than 1 facilitator. What it is that those communities have got a heavy presence in South America, so they were, what we did is we trained Brazilian Portuguese and Chilean Spanish facilitators, because what we found in those communities, people wanted to share in their own language and we needed translation. So it's always better to get people to share in their first language and translate afterwards. But if you expect people to translate while they're trying to share, it's very difficult. You know, that's why I'm not giving this presentation in Afrikaans, because I would find it difficult, even though I would be able to translate it afterwards. Okay. And then we can also see that the knowledge nurture communities wanted a leader. So really what it was is to say we want somebody who's going to be the custodian to make sure that that knowledge is there, that we know where to find that archive when we have to dust it off one day and recommission that knowledge, you know. And then also what we found was that in the launched phase, they felt it was quite important to have strong leadership to get that community going, get it up and running. One of the reasons why I was able to take a sabbatical is that not all of them wanted a facilitator. Because when I'd been at Kumbu Resources, I spent my life training facilitators. That's what I did. Every 2 weeks, I ran a day workshop training facilitators for communities attractive in an organization that was 9,000 strong. And I thought I'm really going to have my job set out for me at Anglo with 200,000 people. But you know what? The culture didn't require facilitators. Let me share this graph with you. This was found by my colleague Carl Schumacher from Anglo Gold Ashanti. And this is something that he got from Gartner. And I thought of this slide yesterday during the presentation in the morning about technology. Have a look at where we're going and what people are wanting. Right, in 8 years' time, people are saying that they want to be able to work any place, anytime. The whole concept of saying that people need a thin client to be able to work at their desk, and we're going to have a hardwired network in the company, and you can't work from beyond the walls because our information security doesn't allow for it. You know, the thing is, what I'm seeing is I'm seeing more and more this battle in our organization, where we've got our information security people saying we've got to lock everything down and we've got to keep everything within our physical network, whereas we've got knowledge workers saying, I want to work anywhere in the world, any time of day or night, and I want to manage my data my way, and if I want to have my little place, my little box on the web or whatever it is, I'm going to do that. And you know what? I'm going to manage my own contents. You are not going to manage contacts. You're not going to manage my contacts on your Outlook server. I'm going to manage my contacts the way I want to manage my contacts. You know, and I think that this is the new challenge that we're going to have in terms of user-friendly technology in our organization is, are we really enabling people, or are we disabling them in the way that we're going with our paranoia? It was actually quite interesting because I ran a workshop earlier, or actually no, later last year, and our legal people were there. And as far as the legal people were concerned, we had to disband all our communities of practice because maybe they were sharing something that was, you know, that shouldn't be shared. You know, what if somebody's actually shared some information and it was slightly incorrect and somebody got hurt or a process was affected, etc., etc., and they actually wanted to shut us down. It was quite fascinating. So I learned that I must never involve those legal people in a nice facilitator, let's be warm and fuzzy and love each other workshop ever again. So I thought that this is also a slide that you can take to your organizations to say, what are we doing in terms of enabling people in the future? You know, knowledge workers, irrespective of their age, they're very tech savvy. You know, I mean, I found it certainly. You know, our mining experts, etc., they don't want to sit in front of a PC. They want their content delivered to their cell phone. You know, they're not interested in this business of being in an office. They want to be at the rock face, and they want to be able to access everything there because that's what they love. They love mining. You know, that's what they want to do. If they wanted to be an office worker, they would have studied accountancy or something like that. You know, so what we've got to do is we've really got to look at how we actually support our knowledge workers instead of actually restricting them going into the future. Right, that's me.